Jacob Van Lunen here with another deck tech. Last week I showed you guys a cool junk deck played by L1X1. He won a premier event with that. Surprisingly enough, Eduardo Lopez, L1X1 in real life, won nationals last weekend in Brazil, so I'd like to tell him congratulations. This week I'm going to look at a really teched out Jund list. Has a lot of cards you wouldn't necessarily see in modern Jund decks. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. You'll find out that this deck makes up for a lot of the weaknesses that Jund has had as of late. So, here are the first few things I'd like to point out. First of all, we have Slave of Bolas, where you would normally find the Bituminous Blast. I think this is a really good choice, because if you're spending 5 mana on a removal spell, you really want to get Primeval Titans. And a card like Slave of Bolas gets the Primeval Titan, and it lets you get 2 lands. So, in a Jund deck, you can pick up 2 more man lands. The man lands do a lot of damage. If you've ever played against Jund, you know that. Blightning, the best card in Standard. None of the Reliquary comes close, but as long as Blightning's legal, it's just going to be beating people. A lot of people have been arguing reasons to side it out and things like that, but even if you're going to argue to do that, there's no way you're not going to play the card in the main. It's just too powerful. There are so many games that are just automatically won where you draw 2 of them, or if your opponent mulligans and you draw 1 of them, it's just such a blowout. You need to play with it. Bloodbraid Elf, one of the most powerful cards. We know that that card deserves a 4-of spot in this deck. I'm really happy to see that Jund has made a little bit of a comeback. I know that seems odd, but it's always nice to see that once people tech up, a deck can still power through it. So, the Obstinate Balos in the main are really good in the Jund mirror. Red has also been pretty popular, as have the red-white decks that usually play Stoneforge Mystic and some number of adventuring gear. So against those types of decks, like the Bolts, the Obstinate Baloths, the Sprouting Thrynaxes, those cards are really good there. Again, to talk about Slave of Bolas more, you can steal people's Sun Titans, attack, get back your Sprouting Thrynax. It's really quite powerful. You have a nice removal suite here. We have Terminates, Maelstrom Pulses, the Slaves, as I talked about before, the Bolts. As a top end, these days we're playing with Grave Titans instead of Broodmate Dragons. This card is just unreal. I can't even describe how good it's going to be once rotation happens. You're not going to be able to path it anymore. I think that's a really good upgrade, and if you haven't made that upgrade to your Jund deck, I strongly recommend making it soon. While you can still play with your Jund deck for the next week. Anyway, here's Garruk Wildspeaker. We haven't seen him in Jund decks for a few months now, but every time you see a Jund deck that's actually winning events, it always seems to have Garruk in it. Every time I play against the deck, whenever they play Garruk, it's always backbreaking, and I've just been... I know it seems like the weakest card whenever you look at a list, but whenever you play against it, it just does really well. 1 Sarkhan, I like that. I never really liked the list I saw with 3 Sarkhans, but he's always been an extremely powerful spell. He's not the kind of card you want to draw more than 1 of, and that's in the same vein as Garruk also. You know, if you only want to draw 1 of a card, the best way to do that is to only play 1 of a card. It's not like you need that card to win the game. So, it's a good lesson to learn that you can learn here from Woo_Chen's deck. He won a premier event with this on Monday. So, the sideboard is pretty basic here. You have 3 Duresses. I think that's a pretty good number. You know, I've seen many lists with 4, but sideboarding gets kind of sketchy there. When you have 3, you can make some nice changes, against the combo decks. You could take out 1 Sarkhan, double Terminate. Or if they have the Slaves too, then if it's a real combo deck, you take out the Slaves for the Thought Hemorrhages too. So that's pretty basic. Against the Naya decks, you have this nice Spark Mage package here. The Mirror is pretty well handled with an extra Obstinate Baloth and some Rune Blasters. I think this deck handles the Mirror really well. Slave of Bolas is excellent at winning the Sprouting Thrynax War, and if you've played a lot of Jund, and you've probably played a lot against Jund if you've played with Jund, so you understand that Sprouting Thrynax is one of the best cards you can play with in the match. Drawing 2 Sprouting Thrynaxes is very difficult to beat. It might not be as difficult as, say, a Blightning was 6 months ago, but it's up there. It's pretty tough. So here we look at other cards in the sideboard. The Doomblades, again, pretty basic against the red-white decks that are attempting to equip things or have a big landfall. It's really nice to just, put them on those cards and to punish them with cards like Bolt and Doomblade. A lot of the time you get players who will play their fetch land and attack with their Geopede, and you'll have 1 red open. And like when you don't declare blocks, they sacrifice their fetch land. You get to just blow them out with a lightning bolt. A lot of people don't realize like what kind of mistakes they're making by doing things like that, but you know, once you play enough with these types of decks, you should pick those things up. Cunning Spark Mages, I'm not sure I love these anymore. Every Naya deck I see has at least 1 or 2 Linvalas between the main and the board, and they can just really shut down like the Spark Mage combo. And it's not even a combo in this deck, you're just Spark Maging away like Cobras and Birds and things like that against the Mythic decks. But even the Mythic decks have Linvala a lot of the time these days, so I'm not sure that's a great choice. Spreading Seas seems to be making a comeback in a lot of lists, so you may want to replace this card with something like a Prophetic Prism or 2. That seems to be a really good call. In Washington, D.C., Owen Turtonworld showed everybody that the Prism can do a lot of work against the blue-white decks. And then Brad showed him that it didn't really matter. But here's an excellent Jund list. If you haven't tried playing with Jund and you want to get like one last go at it while it's still in Standard, I think this is a really great list. It's a fun list. Jund may seem unfun to you, but it's really nice to have like a top-of-the-line list when you're playing a Standard tournament, and this is about as top of the line as it gets. This is Jacob Van Lunen. I'm off, and I'll see you next week.